Thank you. Thank you very much. What an honor to be here. Thank you very much, Dean, for that introduction, and thank you for that wonderful student address. Very, very impressive. I had that role when I was on this stage years ago. I didn't do nearly as well. Beautifully done. So let me start with a reflection. On one of my early trips as deputy secretary, I went to a rural western state to visit a slaughter facility that produced, among other things, significant quantities of hamburger meat. I was shocked by what I saw, not by the actual slaughter itself, as I've visited many plants over the years and I'm quite familiar with the goings-on there, having evaluated the food safety, the humane treatment, and meat grading components of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's work. Rather, I was shocked by what this visit revealed about our food system. Frozen boxes of beef trim, parts of the beef cattle left over after carving out the finer cuts, were being shipped to this rural town from the other side of the world, from New Zealand and Australia. Once at this plant, these boxes of beef trim were thawed and then mixed and ground together with fat from U.S. cattle. At the end of the line, a label was adhered to the hamburger proclaiming it freshly ground. Although the product was safe, perfectly legal, and maybe even yummy, it just didn't seem right. Labeled this way, consumers would likely assume that they were buying something fresh, as in just off the farm, not previously frozen meat from the other side of the world. The life cycle assessment, the sustainability of shipping this meat across 8,000 miles, hey, that couldn't be good. What was going on with our food system that made this a profitable and desirable enterprise? I run into these kinds of questions all the time in my job. Even as deputy, the penultimate point in my career, if you will, I find things not as I would like. After years of working to improve agriculture through better policy, we still have a long way to go. But I do see progress. In the realm of agriculture, today, people are more interested than ever in where their food comes from, how it was produced. They want to know their farmer, and they're asking critical questions like never before. Now, you may not have expected to hear about hamburger in a commencement speech, but as students of public policy, you know what I mean when I say this is a policy window. And when that policy window opens, for however long, you have to have solutions at the ready. In the years that I taught public policy, I found that my students would turn in papers that brilliantly described and documented problems, but their attention to crafting solutions was insufficient. I finally instituted a rule that at least 1/3 of the assignment had to be solution-oriented. Not only is it difficult to devise workable solutions, but you have to believe that it is possible to come up with them. Friends have asked me, what's your message for the graduates? Well, here it is. This address follows a long tradition, challenge you to change the world. You know what? Sometimes you just have to go with a classic. 24 years ago, I crossed this stage, just as you, empowered by what I learned. If it was a different time then, sure. Few of us had our own computer. There was no email, no cell phones. I was shopping for dresses for my post-LBJ career in the U.S. Senate, where women were not allowed to wear pants. But many things were the same. Graham-Rudman-Hollings' balanced budget amendment had passed, and our country was engaged in this roaring debate over how to control the federal budget deficit and severely cutting back on federal spending. The Posse East, Schultz's Garden, and the Hole in the Wall were there, and Lady Bird's bluebonnets dotted the scene. I picked up my bags, went to Washington, and started my new life with Barbara Jordan's powerful moral voice reverberating in my head. Thanks to former Secretary of Labor and LBJ School professor Ray Marshall, our graduates knew how to write a dense, action-packed policy memo that never exceeded 2 pages. That was the rule. Like all of you, I left this stage carrying important skills in statistics and policy analysis. I know the value of an LBJ education. What an outstanding institution, remarkable faculty, gifted students, a loyal alumni network. Over its 40-year history, this great school and its cadre of leaders have made a difference in this country and around the world and inspired others to take up the challenge. As I stand here today, I wonder, what is it that each of you will do? What mark will you leave upon this world? Never doubt your ability and be prepared to take on the task even when success seems unlikely. Just 2 years after my LBJ graduation, while working in the Senate, I had a visit from an organic farmer who asked for my help in getting a federal law passed to establish national standards for organic food. Hey, no one took him seriously in his jeans, unaccompanied by a well-heeled lobbyist. Organic agriculture was considered, as former Senator Bob Kerrey joked, as hippy-dippy agriculture. He was a fan, and he didn't mean that as a critique, but that was sort of how it was taken. And as my colleagues in the Agriculture Committee were wined and dined by their constituent groups, I quietly set to work. Having a sympathetic boss in Senator Patrick Leahy, I was able to write a bill establishing national standards for organic food production. It became law in 1990. Nearly 10 years later, when it got bogged down in implementation, I became an administrator in the Clinton administration, oversaw the writing of the rules. To this day, I'm working to improve the National Organic Program, and that farmer who came to visit me 20 years ago, he's now working at the United States Department of Agriculture in Washington, and we've set a goal to increase the number of organic farmers by 25% in this administration. Every time I go into the grocery and see that organic seal, or visit with tens of thousands of organic farmers, or see studies that point to organic as the fastest growing segment of American agriculture, I know that I helped make that happen. Last year, Dean mentioned this when Time magazine called to say I'd been chosen as one of the 100 most influential people, with the likes of President Obama, the First Lady, and Lady Gaga, don't forget her. I was dumbfounded, actually. In fact, I thought it was someone pulling a joke. They were targeting the wannabes in Washington to see who really believed they were on the list, and I initially didn't return the call. Come on. But it was actually true, and while I was dancing to the music of Prince, aside of Taylor Swift at a New York City gala, I celebrated the fact that years of wonky policy work do matter, and all of us can be a star in our own way. So again, I ask you, how will you make your mark? Policymakers are puzzle masters. We work to fit together politics, economics, natural resource constraints, social justice, and scientific knowledge to create a coherent and compelling picture that drives policy development. As you know, it's an iterative process requiring persistence, patience, compromise, and lots of hard work. Above all, it requires optimism. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe in your ability to change the world. 1 in 3 children born after the year 2000 are expected to develop type 2 diabetes in their lifetime if food trends don't change. 18 million children in this country are food insecure. Obesity rates are skyrocketing. Does that discourage our First Lady, Michelle Obama, from taking on one of the most challenging, complex issues of our time? Not at all. She is dancing her way around this country, inspiring communities to come together and shed thousands of pounds. She is working with USDA to improve school meals and increase fruit and vegetable consumption. She saw a tough, seemingly intractable problem, and she said, let's move. As for that hamburger problem, I'm still working on that puzzle. We're investing in mobile slaughter units to help small farmers provide the necessary infrastructure for local food systems. We're reevaluating our labeling laws to make sure consumers get what they pay for. The thing about policy is it's always a work in progress. It's an evolving, dynamic field. Scientists, I hear, are now at work developing cloned hamburger meat grown in a test tube. I haven't figured out what I think of that yet and the likely policy challenges it will present. So go out there with your dreams Join your talented classmates and change the world. By the way, my Chief of Staff, LBJ School classmate. USDA Deputy Undersecretary for Natural Resources and the Environment, LBJ School classmate. The first time I had to go into a meeting in the Situation Room in the White House, where I was flanked by generals and I was incredibly nervous, I looked up and across the table, I was greeted by the smiling, reassuring face of an LBJ School classmate. Ladies and gentlemen, you're in good company. And there could be no better time than this to be optimistic and embrace change. Let me conclude with the words from our president. Believing that change is possible is not the same as being naive. Go into service with your eyes wide open, for change will not come easily. On the big issues that our nation faces, difficult choices await. We'll have to face some hard truths, and some sacrifice will be required, not only from you individually, but from the nation as a whole. There is nothing naive about your impulse to change the world, because all it takes is one act of service, one blow against injustice to set forth what Robert Kennedy called that tiny ripple of hope. That's what changes the world, that one act, an act by you, class of 2011. Congratulations.